Hello Internet! So today in the post I got something new from Kickstarter, and that's Tiny Epic Cthulhu from Gamelyn Games, along with the expansion Cult of Chaos. Something I backed about, well, over a year ago now. Almost forgot I'd even backed it, so it's a nice surprise that came, especially so close after Christmas. So we're going to get this box open, show you what the components are like, and hopefully have a little bit of a game with it, and I'll give you my thoughts on how the rules work. I'll probably be saving the expansion for a later video. So let's break the plastic on this, the deluxe edition of Tiny Epic Cthulhu, and see just what comes in the box. Now the first thing I noticed is the artwork inside the box lid. Even that is not just plain cardboard, it's a cracking bit of Lovecraftian artwork. It'll probably make a good dice tray for when playing. So you've got here the rulebook, or the Panacatic manuscript. I don't even know how to pronounce that word. It shows you through all the rules, well, everything a rulebook should do, all the components, all the rules. I'll be reading that quite in depth later. First here comes with Astral Artifacts. So this is another one of the mini expansions which came through with the Kickstarter Deluxe Edition. So I may save this for later because I want to play just the base game as you would buy at retail for my first outing, and then slowly add things like this and the Cult of Chaos expansion. And the first thing I see is a huge baggie full of various beasties and counters. So see how we've got some of the great old ones here, some little tentacles, some kind of monsters, or these are really good, solid wood, well painted, screen printed two-tone that you can get a real good feel for the artwork. It's really obvious what they are. These tentacles look like tentacles, Cthulhu looks like Cthulhu. So there's a huge batch of them for all sorts of playing pieces. You've got little pages there, you've got one of your investigators in here. So yeah, these pieces are really good, well printed, wooden quality. Just generally looking really well made. And yeah, a little tiny Epic Cthulhu printed drawstring bag. Because from what I understand, there's going to be a bit of random pulling of some of these. And there's some custom Cthulhu dice here. Cthulhu on one side, tentacle on one side, 3 tentacles or 2 tentacles. They feel really nice. They roll well. They've got a beautiful green colour. The yellow really pops on them. Really, they feel like high quality dice. Now here's what some people would consider the star of the show. The entire board is built around this spinner. So let's see how it goes. So pop that in there. And, oh yeah, it spins really well. There was some talk of it being a bit flaky and a bit catchy, but no, this is spinning really well. If I bring some of these cards up. So I haven't read the rules completely, but I've had a very rough idea of how the game plays. And the spinner takes the centre of the board, which is then surrounded by these locations. So you've got one card for the store, one for the park, the inn, the museum and the library. And these both have 2 sides with slightly different layouts and rules and effects. Again, I don't know the ins and outs yet. I haven't got down to playing my first game, but this builds up the main board. So when you spin the tentacle, it's going to be pointing at 2 different things. It's going to be pointing somewhere around the board at these locations, and it's going to be pointing the other end of the tentacle somewhere on the spinner. So there's going to be lots of things randomly generated for the game. Now this game is, of course, being a Tiny Epic game, it's completely soloable, completely one-player friendly. They've even built it as a 0 to 5-player game, so you can just let the system run itself entirely. Yeah, that spinner feels really high quality. And I know there were some concerns about that. There we've got some of the cards included in the game. So these are like larger than poker or bridge cards, even larger than tarot cards. So they've got the great old ones here. So there's Cthulhu, Nyarlathotep, Yog-Sothoth, the Yig, the Shambler mat, the discard mat. So these would be places to store counters during the game, store tokens. Detective, officer, historian, scientist, priest, doctor. So there you'll be your character cards. And I'm sure this will reflect their stats in some way. You've got a little solo assistant cheat sheet to help you play the one-player game. And the Necronomicon chapters as you collect the cards, the pages of the Necronomicon, which is key to the game. So again, these are quite thin, quite flimsy, but they've got a really nice feel about them, and the artwork is really well printed. The pictures of these old ones, they look really horrific, really good, spot on, and all the printed text is really legible. It doesn't have that fuzzy effect you get with some cheaper games. So that's looking good. And here's a little stack of smaller cards, again showing tentacles, page numbers, different coloured symbols at the bottom. Again, I've no idea how these are going to be used in play yet, but that'll all come through when I read this. So just at first glance, looking at the quality of the production, it's exactly what you'd expect from Gamelyn Games. Really high quality, well printed, really clearly produced, well made wooden tokens. This spinner, which people have advertised about, it feels really good to spin, and it just looks right out of the Cthulhu mythos. Now, you don't just have to rely on the rules, because this also takes part of the, I believe you pronounce Dized tutorials. So you can download an app for your phone or go to dized.com and it'll help you run through a tutorial of the game, which you can play by yourself, and it will teach you the rules as you play a couple of rounds. So I'm going to give this rulebook a read, then I'll probably play through that app once to get a feel for it, and then I'll play a proper game and I'll come back with my thoughts. So I've played a couple of games of Tiny Epic Cthulhu now. I'm just going to tell you a few things I like and a few things I don't like so much. First up, the theming is spot on. The artwork of the town looks really Arkham-esque, and the way the game is split into two phases, and in the first phase you're trying to decode the pages of the Necronomicon, these little pages here, and in the second, once you've translated the entire Necronomicon, you're chasing down the big bad, in this case Nyarlathotep, and sealing away his powers. I think the two halves of the game work really well. There's a good balance of what you're trying to achieve. Again, I like the spinner. It's a tiny little way of doing randomness. Works really well. Like I said, the components, they're also really well made. There's all the Shambler tokens, really solid, thick pieces of wood, all screen printed. They all feel good to use. The dice feel good to use. The cards feel nice. They've got that nice linen feel to them. I mean, they are not linen, but they've got that, that textured feel to them. And I like the fact that it's been designed with solo in mind. Not enough games do that. This game even has a 0-player mode where you can just set up a couple of assistants to go. And I think that's a really interesting way to explore how the game works. And similarly, the way the map is random each time, each location has its own special effect, and the map sides are also double-sided. So when you're randomly flipping them, you're going to have different possible effects at each location as you play each game. So there's going to be variety. And along with each of the characters, they've got their own special effects as well, their own special abilities. So there's a lot of variety, there's a lot of replayability. You know, you've got the different layouts, different characters, different great old ones, which is expanded further in the expansion, which I haven't even opened yet. So there's got a lot to do. Now, there are a few things that I don't like. Some of it might just be my own personal confusion. So the first thing which I pick up on is the solo assistant here. It says at the top, the basic spin of the turn is spin the Wheel of Madness. Step 2, assistant actions. Step 3, take player actions. Which makes you think you do one spin, solo assistant, player. But in the rulebook itself, for the solo mode, it says spin the wheel, assistant actions, spin the wheel, your actions. So I'm not sure which way to do it. If you spin the wheel just once, I'm not sure who gets the bonuses in some of it. And if you spin the wheel twice, it feels like the threat on the board builds up a little bit too quickly. I mean, it wasn't insurmountable here, but I was playing against the weakest of the great old ones. So maybe if I was playing against Yog-Sothoth or Cthulhu, it might have just been a bit too much to deal with. So that's a bit of a confusion. And secondly, the majority of the tokens are these tentacles. You have the red, green and blue, which are rage, greed and fear, madness tentacles, which, you know, line up with the different coloured shamblers that go across the board. That's fair enough. You've also got these black eldritch tentacles and these purple chaos tentacles. Now, you're drawing those from the bag a lot, so I understand why they've got to be the same shape. You know, you don't want to be able to feel the difference in there, otherwise you'd be able to pick what you wanted. But there are several times when you have to draw them. They go to different places on the board, and depending on how you spend them or where they overload, they go to other places around the board. And it just gets a bit messy and confusing. I mean, just let me show you this in the rulebook. This is they've got to build this little flow chart to show you where the different types of tentacles go and under what conditions. And there's so many different things to make it happen, and so many different directions they can go in. I've only played 2 games. I might completely grok this, but it's a bit confusing. It's the same pieces doing so many duties that it becomes quite muddled. You know, following through with the book, it's fine. I did try and use the Dized app and use the app tutorial to teach me a little bit of the game. That I didn't find too useful any more than the book. It just seemed a bit slower. I had to wait for the little video to show me, and once you got to your second turn, it was showing you the same thing a lot. And I mean, it's a really good idea to have an app-driven tutorial to teach new players the game, but I think just reading the book would have sufficed. So I'm going to pack this away now, and I'm going to give you my final thoughts. So I've done a bit of Googling since recording this video, so there's a little update here for you. On the Dized website, there is a pretty good FAQ which does cover some of my queries about the rules really well. So I'll put a link to that in the description. Also, because I wanted a PDF copy of the rules, I went back to the Kickstarter and looked at the print and play copy of the rules they sent me out several months back. And I noticed that it has cleared up a lot of the rules already, and even has a much, much clearer flowchart for how the tokens are moved during the game. It's strange this isn't in the boxed version, because this is clearly superior. Maybe maybe this will be added in later printings, and it was just finalised too late for the Kickstarter version. Either way, it's nice to see they have done something about these issues. So, what can I say about Tiny Epic Cthulhu? Overall, I did enjoy it. There's lots of decisions to be made in the game, and they can go in different ways. I think it's got real potential as a multiplayer game as well as a solo player game. It does miss the mark in a couple of ways. And that is, for a tiny epic game, it is not simple. There's so many different parts of the board. Those tentacles are moving around all over. It's a bit of a confusing system to get your head around. Like I said, I've played 2 games. I've still got the manual beside me at all times. And that flowchart isn't particularly helpful, so I'm flicking back and forth through the rules. If they had a better way of showing you which pieces go where for which situation, that would really help. It's like it's missing a player aid. Also, the rules do need some errata. Like I was saying about the turns, is it spin solo assistant spin player or spin solo player? There's a few other little bits that also don't make sense, like for the translating the Necronomicon pages, it says in phase 2 of the game, the player can no longer do that as an action, but the solo assistant is still translating pages every single turn, if it's possible to do so with its current levels. So, I mean, is it supposed to be different for the both of them? Or is one of them doing it but shouldn't be, or vice versa? So I think what it really needs is a updated version 2 of the rules, or a good big FAQ somewhere. I haven't gone hunting for it, but I think it just needs a few confusions ironed out. But I will play it a couple more times, and I'm looking forward to getting these other expansions in. So the Astral Artifacts micro expansion, just a few more tokens there, a couple of cards. I'm not sure exactly what this adds. Could be fun. And the Cult of Chaos boxed add-on, add some extra great old ones, extra players, extra town locations. So this could really change the game. This could really make things much more interesting. But I'm going to play another game or 2 of just pure Tiny Epic Cthulhu before I make that move. But overall, I do recommend it. Compared to the last game I played, the Cards of Cthulhu, this is a much better experience. It feels like I'm an investigator translating the Necronomicon, trying to defeat the old one and lock him away, trying to avoid the madness taking over. It does a really good job of that. However, even for a small box game, there is a better option out there. If you ever get the chance to find it, Shadow of the Elder Gods by Laboratory. This was a Kickstarter, almost a decade ago now. It does everything this one tries to do, I think, but better in a smoother package. This feels like a real adventure in the Cthulhu mythos. Like I said, Tiny Epic Cthulhu, overall, thumbs up, but it's not the best Tiny Epic game by a long stretch. Did you kickstart this? Are you going in for their current Kickstarter of the Game of Thrones? Tiny Epic Game of Thrones? Do you like any of the Tiny Epic games? Anything you got to say, leave me a comment below. I always like having conversations with you guys. And let's see what other gaming excitement 2025 brings. Until next time, happy gaming!